Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the English Daily Book Summary YouTube channel. In order to not stop learning, listen to an English book summary every day for free.
Max Horkheimer, Eclipse of Reason, on reclaiming the individual and fighting oppression. The author Max Horkheimer was understandably concerned about the state of the world in the 1940s. By this point, Horkheimer had been a professor of philosophy at Frankfurt University and the director of the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory. But with the rise of the Nazi Party, the Frankfurt School was forced to relocate to New York City. Given his background as both a German and a leader in philosophical and sociological theory, Horkheimer was in a unique position to try and explain how fascism had nearly overtaken Europe and brought about such unthinkable horrors. Eclipse of Reason is a very heady and academic work of philosophical accounting. In the sections ahead, we'll present the material in as simple a fashion as possible and, along the way, perhaps show how Horkheimer's work continues to be relevant to modern life in the 21st century. Subjective and Objective Reason. Max Horkheimer's Eclipse of Reason is broken up into 5 chapters, and we'll follow that blueprint in this blink, tackling each chapter in turn. Given that the first chapter is about twice as long as the others, we'll break that one up into 2 sections. The first chapter is entitled Means and Ends, and it jumps right into the deep end of the philosophical pool by dissecting the main topic, reason. Specifically, it gets into how our relationship to reason has evolved over the years. Reason is the human capacity for thought, understanding, and judgment. Among other things, we use reason to understand the difference between right and wrong. Horkheimer kicks things off by explaining how we've landed upon 2 approaches to reason: subjective reason and objective reason. Subjective reason focuses on efficiency and practicality, essentially figuring out the best way to achieve a goal without questioning whether the goal itself is worthwhile. It's all about means and ends. On the other hand, objective reason asks bigger questions. It's concerned with universal truths, morality, and the harmony between humanity, society, and nature. Historically, thinkers like Plato believed reason wasn't just a tool. It was a guiding principle that could help humans align their lives with an overarching cosmic order. He argued that living according to objective reason leads to a happy and successful life. This idea wasn't about optimizing goals, but about striving for concepts like the greatest good and the meaning of human existence. Over time, however, this lofty view of reason was replaced by the subjective version. Philosophers like John Locke emphasized reason's role in practical matters, like solving problems, calculating probabilities, and achieving tangible ends. The trouble is, this shift drained reason of its deeper purpose, turning it into a tool to achieve whatever goals society set, no matter how arbitrary or harmful those goals might be. We can look at this development as a formalization of reason, and it's had serious consequences. Ideas like justice, equality, or human rights lose their grounding because reason is no longer used to evaluate the worth of these ideals. Instead, it's reduced to serving the dominant social and economic forces. Under these conditions, the concept of self-interest overtakes other moral and societal motivations, and a fractured society emerges. In the next section, we'll pick up this thread and look at more examples of how the shift from objective to subjective reason, otherwise known as the formalization of reason, has done more harm than good. Reason as a tool for efficiency. One of the main messages of the first chapter is that reason really needs an objective framework. When we make reason subjective, we remove the framework that Plato advocated for, and without it, reason becomes vulnerable to manipulation. For instance, the idea of human dignity becomes an empty slogan unless it is tied to a framework that puts forth a deeper, shared understanding of morality. Without it, subjective reason can then be used to justify oppression or dictatorship if it aligns with someone's interests. Democracy becomes undermined, leaving societies susceptible to tyranny, as no rational argument can oppose it when reason itself has lost its compass. Using objective reason, the thinkers of the past sought to align the laws they created with higher ideals, whereas today there's a tendency to align laws with subjective preference or institutional dogma. A lot of this shift has to do with utility and efficiency. How can we be of practical use? How can reason be applied to achieve specific instrumental goals? These questions are at the heart of the philosophy of pragmatism, which equates truth with practical success and reduces ideas to mere tools for action. Pragmatism dismisses the contemplative pursuit of truth, once humanity's highest ideal. By focusing solely on utility, it denies the intrinsic value of concepts like justice or goodness, viewing them only through their immediate effects on behavior. Instant benefits outweigh long-term good. As a result, personal passions and nonconformist attitudes, once celebrated as expressions of individuality, have been commodified. Even the idea of rebellion has become predictable, reduced to hobbies or mass-approved diversions. This loss of authenticity leads to a society where emotions, even joy, feel hollow. Smiling faces, masking despair. In the industrial age, reason became a mechanism for achieving ends, no matter the moral cost. It led to division being put in place between intellectual and manual labor, which justified societal hierarchies. This shift mirrors the rise of totalitarian ideologies where intellectual critique is suppressed and reason is stripped of its transformative potential. The new question becomes, can we reclaim true philosophic thought as a guide for humanity? Can reason transcend its instrumental use and address the deeper dilemmas of existence, or will it succumb to being a hollow methodology, serving only to rationalize the status quo? When science and religion lead to the same ends. Okay, let's move on to the next chapter of Eclipse of Reason, entitled Conflicting Panaceas. A perfectly understandable title, right? In this context, a panacea is a solution to a big social problem or perhaps a pressing existential issue. In other words, we're looking at the conflicting or competing solutions that have been offered over the centuries, whether it's through different philosophies or the age-old debate between science and religion. Generally speaking, we can look at modern life as trending toward a rejection of philosophical thought and putting a growing amount of faith in science as the ultimate tool for solving humanity's problems. This transition is one of the hallmarks of the Age of Enlightenment, but it isn't necessarily a good thing. In the 19th century, the philosophical school of positivism suggested that science is inherently constructive and only destructive when misused. But isn't this sort of optimism rather naive? Today, we can see that science and technology's role in society is inseparable from its economic and social functions, which can lead to both progress and regression. In this way, positivism has led to technocracy and governments that want to put engineers in charge of society. You could contrast positivism with the revival of older philosophical systems like Neo-Thomism, so named after Thomas Aquinas, which tries to reconcile science with religious dogma. But the result isn't much different. So long as you're tying your principles to a modern institution, which includes organized religion, you run the risk of those principles becoming a tool for justifying political and social control. In the end, both positivism and Neo-Thomism ultimately fail to foster genuine critical thought. In their own way, these schools of thought serve external authorities, whether that's oppressive technocrats or church leaders trying to hold on to power. Horkheimer warns against the illusion that science can provide an absolute solution to social problems. He points out the dangers of turning science into a new dogma, likening its glorification to the mysticism it once sought to replace. The better solution is a philosophy that embraces contradictions and remains open to change, rather than one that rigidly serves power or clings to outdated absolutes. Man versus nature. In the third chapter, we delve into the revolt of nature, as Max Horkheimer puts it. Here, we look at the result of what happens when reason has been stripped of its deeper purpose, becoming purely a tool for control and preservation. When reason no longer seeks higher truths or values, it reduces everything, including people and nature, to mere instruments. The human being, or the subject, once celebrated as autonomous, becomes hollow, its existence reduced to functioning within a system that demands total domination, both of the external world and of oneself. This, Horkheimer argues, is the dark undercurrent of modern industrial society. Subjectivism has produced a nihilism that erodes individuality. For centuries, humans have sought dominion over nature, but it has only brought us into a different kind of combative environment. Self-preservation now hinges on adapting to the relentless demands of rationalized systems, like a twisted version of Darwinism. Personal impulses and freedom are increasingly subordinated to societal pressures, leaving individuals to become reactive tools within a larger machine. Economic and social systems have evolved into blind forces, demanding compliance rather than fostering individuality. The result? Humanity's pursuit of domination ends up enslaving itself. Modern advertising, for instance, bombards consumers with exaggerated messages of choice and quality, masking the manipulation beneath. Similarly, fascist regimes like Nazi Germany exploited repressed desires and mimetic urges, our subconscious desire to imitate those around us, by channeling them into destructive conformity. Leaders like Hitler capitalized on these impulses, creating an illusion of rebellion while reinforcing domination. At the heart of this critique lies a paradox. Humanity's triumph over nature hasn't freed us but shackled us further. Reason, once a beacon for progress, now reinforces the very domination it sought to overcome. Horkheimer warns against regression or romanticizing the past as the answer. This can, in fact, deepen oppression. Instead, true liberation lies in unshackling independent thought, rekindling reason's potential to reconcile humanity with the world rather than subjugating both. Seeking the individual. In the fourth chapter of Eclipse of Reason, we reach the rise and fall of the individual. As the author points out, the trajectory of individuality works as a pretty good mirror for the crisis of reason itself. Contrary to what you might think, individuality isn't just about being a unique person. It's tied to history, self-awareness, and the sacrifices people make for security and identity. But here's the catch. Individuality thrives only when society supports it. If the focus of society is on promoting short-term pleasures over long-term growth, individuality among the masses becomes fleeting. There's a big difference between modern urban cities and the polis of ancient Greece, where traditional societal structures allowed Plato to connect individuality to a harmonious social order. From there, individuality evolved during early Christianity, which gave the soul a profound sense of value and depth. Unlike the cold rationality of earlier philosophies, Christianity linked self-renunciation with universal love, making the soul central to human identity. But this individuality wasn't about isolation. It thrived within community and connection. During the era of free enterprise, however, individuality became tied to material gain. But today's corporate-driven society erodes the economic and social basis of individuality. Instead of planning for the future, people focus on surviving the present. The decline of spontaneity and critical thought, once hallmarks of individuality, goes hand in hand with the rise of industry and the coordinated efforts to turn humans into mere cogs within a broader system. Modern ideologies, shaped by mass culture, mold workers' beliefs. Instead of striving to address social injustice, workers are taught to accept inequality as a fact of life. Economic conditions foster a positivistic attitude, one focused on the immediate rewards rather than on dreams of a fundamentally better world. This mindset is shared by both labor and industry leaders who increasingly view technological progress as the means to a future where efficiency and productivity eliminate all societal problems. Horkheimer warns that these trends have led to catastrophic consequences, including the rise of fascism, which sought to obliterate individuality through terror. True individuality resides not in the icons of mass culture, but in those who resist oppression and irrationality, often at great personal cost. The anonymous martyrs of history symbolize humanity's potential for a more just and meaningful existence, and it is the task of philosophy to amplify their silenced voices. A philosophical pursuit toward truth. We've made it to the final chapter of Eclipse of Reason, entitled, in true Horkheimer fashion, on the concept of philosophy. As the author has alluded to in previous sections, he sees philosophy not as some high-minded bourgeois pursuit, but as a way forward, out of the existential trap we've put ourselves in. As he put it in the last chapter, philosophy can be used to amplify the individual and elevate human beings to a position that no longer makes us mere cogs in the machine. For as long as we're in that position, we're susceptible to manipulation and the desires of authoritarian leaders. However, modern philosophy has kind of lost this thread. This is the main crux of the text. Without a solid philosophy based on the individual, we have formalized reason, a logic stripped of its human essence, which has led to a cultural crisis. On one hand, the divide between humans and nature has hit a destructive peak, turning people into tools of repression rather than independent thinkers. On the other hand, modern philosophy, meant to reconcile these tensions, often ignores or denies them, leaving us more vulnerable. Therefore, philosophy must embrace its historical roots and critically engage with the present. Definitions and ideas aren't static. They evolve with history, and understanding them requires humility and depth. Language, for instance, holds layers of meaning shaped by centuries of human experience. Yet, in an age of surface-level thinking, even language gets flattened, further disconnecting us from truth. Philosophy isn't a tool but a means of critique, a way to confront the contradictions between our ideals and our reality. By exposing these tensions, it keeps us from falling into blind conformity or oppressive systems. Ultimately, philosophy acts as humanity's memory and conscience, reminding us of past struggles and guiding us toward a freer, more humane future. The path forward, Horkheimer insists, is one of negation. We must reject anything that diminishes human potential. True progress means challenging the misuse of reason and reclaiming its role in emancipating humanity from fear, superstition, and oppression. The main takeaway of this Blink to Eclipse of Reason by Max Horkheimer is that modern rationality has been shaped by the modern industrial age, making it an instrument of domination and alienating individuals from their true potential. Reason has become fragmented into subjective and objective forms, resulting in a formalization of reason that has led to oppressive ideologies, leading to a sense of nihilism while also fostering authoritarianism. The very nature of reason, which has historically been tied to humanity's drive to dominate nature, has led to our becoming cogs in the industrial machine, highly susceptible to manipulation. True progress can only emerge through a self-critical philosophy that recognizes the contradictions within society that are limiting human potential. Ultimately, philosophy can act as a corrective force, helping people confront and navigate the imbalances of modern life and ultimately fostering a more humane and emancipated society. Okay, that's it for this Blink. We hope you enjoyed it. If you can, please take the time to leave us a rating. We always appreciate your feedback. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next Blink.